Welcome to the Tea Grannies. I'm Elise.
And I'm Maria. Today we'll be reading and critiquing query letters sent in by our listeners. So pour yourself a cup of tea and let's get started. Just a quick note for our listeners, if you submitted a first page and received a reply from us, your page will be read on the show. Due to our schedule, we'll be critiquing one submission per episode before we dive into the topic of the day, with the exception of these query critique episodes. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. And now, on to the show. So, we'd like to welcome Carleen back to our show. Thank you for joining us again today. And why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners one more time for those who haven't met you.
Hello, I'm Carleen. I am very happy to be back here. Am I the first second-time guest or like two-time guest?
I think you might be.
Maybe. We've had Maya.
Yeah.
We've had Maya twice.
Oh,
Okay.
So, but you're gonna be in 3, so you will be the first
Technically.
third-time guest. We've had Eileen.
Yeah.
We've had Eileen twice as well.
I accept my sort of prize.
You do get a prize for that. Yeah.
I'm an associate agent at Art House Literary Agency. I have been there for technically almost 2 years now, which feels crazy if you include my internship.
Nice.
I work in both nonfiction and fiction. On the fiction side, I only do adult fiction across contemporary genres.
Perfect. I love it.
Sick.
And we think you're super, super cool.
What do you do on nonfiction again?
Basically everything. I have done a little bit of memoir. I have a psychology book that I have on sub right now. But in nonfiction, I kind of just want to be surprised by an interesting topic that somebody's passionate about. I like to say in nonfiction, you want to have like a very niche topic that fits a wide audience. And basically that could be anything.
I love that. I think we have a nonfiction or a memoir query in this batch. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on that one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So before we dive into our critiques, we're going to talk a little bit about what agents look for in a query. If you need a little more information, a good place to start would be our dedicated query episode from season 3, and that's episode 2 and 3.
It's way back
So
there.
our first ever query critique episodes. But essentially, a query letter is your pitch to agents who will represent you to publishers to get you a book deal. It's a marketing and sales tool, and it's absolutely crucial in the traditional publishing world.
In terms of like format, we thought we'd go over that really quickly. And Carleen, you can like correct us on all the things we get wrong in the next 5 minutes. But a lot of people talk about the query letter formula of hook, book, and cook. We've talked about this before. And basically you want to first hook your reader, like with any piece of writing, and then give a brief pitch about what this book is. And I think key to remember, and we'll talk about this for some of the query letters in this show, is that this isn't the place to give like the whole story and to give away from start to finish the ending and everything. Like it's a teaser, and you want to make the agent want to read more. So then between the hook and book sections, you should also include like what genre is it, what's your word count, and then any comparative titles that you have, to kind of get a better sense of where it would sit on the shelf. And then close off the query with your cook section. This is all about you, credentials, experience. If you don't have any of those as a fiction writer, that is a-okay, and you can keep the cook section really short so it's less work for you. If you are a nonfiction author, this might be a bit of a problem. So make sure that you have some kind of reputation in your field. That will probably be necessary.
Yeah. And what else would you add, Carleen?
What I always say that I think a lot of people don't say is that I need to understand the concept of your book.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will do, and you'll hear me say this when we're talking about the actual queries that we're going to talk about today, but a lot of people will give me vibes or like, you know, about things about the character, but they don't actually give me the concept of like what happens in your book. I need to know that.
Basically the plot.
I mean, I don't need to know the whole plot, but I need to know like the idea behind the plot.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Like I know a lot of writers, like including me, follow vibes when they're writing, but what I think a lot of writers forget, and I've noted this a few times in the query notes, is that the query letter is a business letter. not the place to be like, yeah, so like I was thinking like some Star Wars vibes with like some more, like that's not gonna fly.
Oh, and you made me think of something else that we actually see a lot that is very, I don't want to say annoying, but it is kind of annoying. Don't say like, this is something you've never seen before. This is uncomparable to anything else you've ever seen. That immediately just makes me feel like you don't know the market very well. And there probably is a lot of stuff you could comp your book to, and you've just not done that research.
Yes. Yeah. That always is kind of surprising to me. How many people are just like, I'm just going to send this. I don't need comps. Like, this is totally original. Like, nothing's really original anymore.
At the very least, like, maybe it has some similar vibes to something, or like a very similar plot point or something.
Yeah,
Give me something.
Like you can pull that from something. It doesn't have to be exact, but that's the thing. Comp titles get people a lot. And I think that's where we're always harping on about reading is research. This is one of the reasons why you have to read in the genre that you're writing, is so that you have comp titles and you actually know what you're talking about and what people want in that genre. I feel like this could turn into a really long chat. So we're going to jump ahead to our query.
Shall we start?
So we will start with our first query.
Dear Elise and Maria of the Tea Grannies, I am currently seeking representation for Petrichor, my adult fantasy novel accompanied by elements of science fiction and series potential. Petrichor stands at a total of 78,000 words and is perfect for fans of One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig and The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Petrichor boasts all manner of mythical monsters and will appeal to lovers of epic fantasy. An ancient spell forestalls nightwood creatures from lurking on mortal lands. Eos, a mortal woman, resides in a druid-based matriarchy. Her life is a quiet one, and though she suffers a disquieted mind, her heart brims with the love of her daughter and the land. Her world changes when Eos crosses the protection wards to rescue her wayward friend. The Nightwood is no place to chase salvation, nor is it offered. Eos is caught and carted to the Dakra kingdom. In possession of its first mortal, Dakra's ruler seeks to exploit Eos. Eos must escape an oppressive realm that craves to control the mana she wields. In her undertaking to return home, Eos is forced to examine deep social hostility moored within her, and to untangle her hatred. In doing so, Eos learns, far from the root of her peace, that her isolation is not as absolute as she once believed. I wrote Petrichor because I value stories centered on strong female characters who demonstrate their power through resilience, self-discovery in the face of hopeless situations, and revenge. I also wrote this story to explore clashing ideas between cultures. I am a 2014 graduate from Anonymous University with a Master of Science in Childhood Literacy Education, which I have found decidedly impractical for writing fantasy. In my free time, I enjoy writing, furthering my education in parenthood, curated by 2 wild children, and growing tomatoes. Because of your interest in fantasy and science fiction, I hope you might be curious about my story. Below, you'll find the first 10 pages of Petrichor for your consideration, and I will happily provide my completed manuscript upon request. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, so this one was 358 words, which is pretty average and good for a query, so that is great. That said, and we will come to these notes, but I do think that a lot of it could be revised. So we'll start at the beginning. I have a question for you two, which is the part that says, my adult fantasy novel accompanied by elements of science fiction. Do we need the accompanied by elements of science fiction part? My question was, I think we could just leave it at adult fantasy.
Yeah.
I think
series potential, because I just feel like that part's more important, and I don't know if we need the science fiction part, but I would defer to you on that, so I would love your thoughts.
Okay, my thoughts are, it depends on how sci-fi we're talking. Like, if it's just a few things, it kind of still falls under like the fantasy umbrella, right? But if it's set in space or something, then that's a totally different thing. So I think it would depend more on it would, the writer would have to decide, I would say.
Maybe this is a sidebar, but if it is set in space, would it not then just be a science fiction?
Right? That's exactly it.
Well,
so
there's,
I think,
you've you've touched on the debate of the century.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I'm back out. I don't want this conversation.
We don't have to go deep into it. I'm doing a seminar and a class this week on science fiction, and my first question for the seminar is, what's the difference between science fiction and fantasy? Because everyone's opinion on that is different. Which is why I think we see in a lot of bookstores and a lot of conversations, people just call it SFF, science fiction fantasy. Yeah, they bunch it all together. So if you're going to be saying like my work has elements of both, I would almost say like just do that. Say it's science fiction slash fantasy. Say it's both. If you're not going to highlight one over the other. But I think there's a point to be made that it does depend. Like, does this author say accompanied by elements because the sci-fi elements are pretty minor, but they still think they're important? We don't have those details. I don't think those details are reflected in the query in a way that explains this. So
it feels more fantasy to me in the description.
It feels very
of the
fantasy.
Book. Yeah. So I think they could probably just call it an adult fantasy novel and cut the elements of science fiction, and that's something that the agent would get further into if they requested pages or read pages or whatever.
Yeah. Or if the sci-fi element is supposed to be more obvious, then they need to revise the query to reflect that.
Yeah,
right. So
totally agree.
Yeah.
My next point is just that, like, this is such a personal thing. I love having the metadata at the front of the query. I know that some people say the complete opposite, so that is a personal thing. Take it with a grain of salt. I like to be set up for what I'm about to get into. So I like at the beginning, so that gets a big check mark for me on this one. And then, okay, I have a funny note coming into the first, like, body paragraph of this. The word forestalls. Is that a common word in fantasy? Because I had to Google it, and then I felt like a dummy.
It's not a word I would be able to define for you right now. I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
So, it's not.
I'm literally looking it up right now because I was like, I don't know. To prevent or obstruct an anticipated event or action by taking action ahead of time.
So I might change that to just like hinders. Just to not, because like you just don't want to start off by confusing people. And if the three of us all couldn't have defined that word, then probably not a lot of people could have. I just wanted to hear if it was just like a common word in fantasy that I just don't know because I don't read a lot of fantasy.
I personally got the gist from context of like, oh, okay, it sounds like hinders. Like that was my brain's thing, but that will not be true for everyone. Like I'm a vocabulary nerd, so that's me.
And then, okay, I really wanted to point out, I loved the way this author gave us such a clear, simple way of setting up who the woman is and where she lives. Like she's a mortal woman who resides in a druid-based matriarchy. That's so simple and clear, and like I understand. And it's a very low word count way to say that, which is great, and that's what you want in a query. I do think that part of this paragraph could be kind of just taken out. And I put a note of like maybe just starting at the point where she says, when Eos crosses the protection wards to rescue her friend. Initially, I said that, but then I also had a question mark because then I was like, wait, who is this friend? We don't know anything about this friend. So then that brought me to another question that then I just kind of continued to have questions from then on. And really what I finally boiled all of my thoughts down to on this one was that we learn about like her coming into this situation and we learn about her, what she's forced to examine and what she learns. We don't really learn what the concept of this book is. I don't quite understand what type of a plot I'm getting into. And so I think I would actually just revise this entirely to be a little more plot focused.
Yeah, I think that is almost word for word what my comments boil down to. I start off by saying like the opening and closing portions, like the hook and the cook portions worked relatively well. There's some maybe like we were talking about the genre, the wording that could be tweaked a little bit. Like the comp titles are solid. The word count is there. Like you said, I like having all that up front. And I did have a question about that for one of the queries we'll talk about later. But yeah, the hook and the cook portion were pretty solid from my perspective as a non-agent. So just keeping that grain of salt out there. But then the book part lost me a bit. Like I had to read it a few times to get what was happening. I started to get the gist of it, but then even then I was fuzzy on like specificity of the overarching plot line. So what's the character's motivation for this book? Is the point for her to rescue this friend? Is that the plot thread that keeps going through? But we kind of lose that in the description. So is it then, is she fighting against this Dakra ruler for the rest of the book, or is she trying to get home for the rest of the book? And then there's just some vague things like untangling her hatred toward whoever she hates, which is unclear. So I kind of wrap it all up by saying, like, I'm curious about this. I'm like curious about this woman, about the, different aspects of her life and the world that she's going through. I like the empathy that's created by talking about her daughter at the beginning very briefly. I think that was a little bit helpful. Maybe it's unnecessary, but I liked it. But that plot thread being really clear and like, this is the concept. This is the point of this book. This is kind of the main journey that we're going to be going on. That's where I think this query needs to find that and really focus in on it so that it's a lot clearer.
Yeah, it reads a bit like back cover copy review type description and not as on top of like what actually is happening, because again, business letter, you're trying to get them to want to sell your book, so they need to know what the main plot is. They don't need to be, it's not like when it's a back cover copy and you're like, here's a few things to intrigue you, and then there's going to be this like journey, blah, blah, blah. It has to be a lot more specific. So yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the beginning and the end are really good. I really like that. And I'm not an agent, but I also really love it when they put the title and the genre and the word count, all that stuff at the beginning. Because in my opinion, like a lot of people query agents who don't represent their genre because they just don't do their homework. So why should the agent have to sit through an entire query letter only to get to the end and be like, this isn't even something that I would represent? Like, it's kind of a waste of time.
Even if it is a genre I represent, like, it's so much harder for me to consider something when I don't understand yet what it is. Like, sometimes the beginning of the first couple paragraphs of a query, I don't yet understand just from that if it's a horror or a contemporary romance. Like, you know what I mean? And I feel so ungrounded at the beginning. But if I just know, go into this expecting it to be a thriller, then I know what to expect.
Yes. And so I do think, if they rework their middle section here about their plot and everything like that, because there were some really good word choices that I liked. I liked, you said really concise, like ancient spell, the mortal woman resides in a druid-based matriarchy. So like we're getting a lot in these sentences, sometimes, not through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then my other question for Carleen is, there's a section here where the writer is saying why they wrote it, and they value stories centered on strong female characters, etc. Is that something that you like to see in a query, or does that feel like a question for later?
I love knowing the author's connection to why they've written something, or like not even necessarily their why, but like their connection to their own book. I actually even wrote that here, and I was going to make a point to say it. And sometimes that could be as simple as like this, like the author values stories centered on strong female characters. That's great. If it's something like, there's another one that we will read where it talks about how the author's culture reflects what's in the book. And like, I love to know that. And it's not necessary information, but if you have the space to include it, which this author definitely does at this point, at least, definitely include it.
Okay, that's good to know. That was a question I had, because I've never included that in any of my queries. Probably because when I start thinking about like why I'm writing it, I'm like, well, they're not my therapist. They probably don't want to know everything.
Sometimes we become therapists for our clients a little bit.
I believe that. But yeah, I mean, this sounds like a really fun book as well. I wanted to point that out. And I also really liked in the section about the writer, where they say they have a Master of Science, which they found decidedly impractical for writing fantasy.
I love
That's
that
just
line.
like the
was
cutest. I just love that so much. I think it tells us a lot about them.
If you can inject personality like that, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I agree.
Dear Carleen, Maria, and Elise, 13-year-old Morgan is 50% banshee and 100% fed up living on Earth, and she's about to do something about it in my 52,000 words middle grade fantasy, Hollow World. Fans of the mythical adventures of Bahua and the Soul Stealer and saving holiday worlds in peril like Long Live the Pumpkin Queen are in for some tricks and treats. Outcast and branded as a weirdo in her podunk town, Morgan discovers a spell to turn herself into a powerful, full-blooded banshee so she can live year-round in the strange and wondrous land of Hollowworld, a place where everything Halloween is alive and real. One catch, she needs the help of a human child to do it, and the only kid who is cool with her is Caleb, the 9-year-old she's been tutoring. Unfortunately, she can only take him if his big bully brother Zane tags along. Zane is the main reason she wants to spirit away from Earth in the first place. Everything is candy corn perfection until Caleb gets kidnapped by an under-the-bed monster bent on using him to destroy Hollowworld. Now, Morgan and Zane have 3 days to rescue Caleb, save Hollowworld from grave danger, and still fulfill her dream. As they face the land's spooky threats together, a thought begins to haunt Morgan that maybe friendship, and not power, is the key to her happiness. I graduated from Anonymous University with a degree in radio, TV, film with a specialization in screenwriting. I'm currently an active member of SCBWI and have been involved in the Writers' League of Anonymous and critique groups. My inspiration for Hollowworld is a desire to create more beloved classics around this enchanting holiday. Thank you for your time and consideration.
This query was 302 words, which is like the sweet spot, I would say. It's like not too short, but like not too long. I thought this one overall, just I'll say ahead of time here, this one did a really good job. To start with the opening paragraph, I thought that the setup in this one of the way that it's like framed as, I don't know, something about the framing in this one just really worked for me. I think things like the way this paragraph ended with the are in for some tricks and treats, just so like cute. Got the voice so good, and we understand that it's like maybe a little bit cutesy and humorous, which makes sense. It is middle grade. We got all the information we need. I think the title is really cute. I love a simple but expressive title. And yeah, I think that they just did a really good job of setting this up in a way that is very clear what it is, you know, all the metadata, and we got a little bit of the voice, which I like.
Yeah. My notes just say like basically the character and quirk that we get out of this is like so delightful. And then I actually had a question for you on this one, because the opening line, 13-year-old Morgan is 50% banshee, 100% fed up living on Earth, and she's about to do something about it. I burst out laughing. I thought that was the funniest thing. And my question was like, is an agent going to like that, or is that stepping over some invisible line of quirk? Like,
I don't think it's stepping over a line at all. I think it's showing off probably who you are as an author. I'm assuming that probably gives the personality of the author a bit. And it also shows the voice really well of the book, I'm assuming. And I think if an agent is like put off by that, they're not your agent.
Great point. Yeah. Okay.
Going into like the second, I did have a couple questions going into this like second paragraph. When it says to turn herself into a powerful, full-blooded banshee, I'm assuming that means like as opposed to the 50% she already was, but I wasn't 100% sure that that's what that meant.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there is a more clear way to say that. The other question I had is the human child who's the only kid who is cool with her. Is that because like all these kids know that she's 50% banshee and like they don't like that? Like, is that an othering thing for her? And that's why there's just this one kid that might help her? I would maybe like that sentence to be a little bit more descriptive so we understand exactly what she's up against in this normal town that she lives in. And then finally, we don't understand from this why the big brother Zane has to tag along. And I would rather know that than know that Zane is the reason she wants to leave Earth. Because I think that would set it up better for me to understand like why he's even in this story if he's someone she doesn't want to be around. And I think that information would just be more useful.
Okay, that makes sense, because there was something about that. What was my comment on this? I wanted to know her motivations for leaving Earth. Like, does Zane bully her as well? And I just wanted some clarification on that. But the way you said it, like, yeah, if we can figure out why he has to go along, you know, does Caleb just want him to come because he's kind of scared? whatever the reason is. I think it would be helpful to know that. And then, yeah, like if he's the one that bullies her, which is kind of maybe insinuated because she has it, or the writer has it as his big bully brother.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd like to have a little clarification on that too. That was the only thing I was a bit like, well, what's the point of that guy? If there's not, like, I just don't know what the point is of him yet. Like, and I was wondering, like, oh, is that why she wants to leave?
Yeah.
So if that is, I mean, it's probably all tied together.
Mm-hmm.
So if that could be clarified, I think that would be really great, because I really, really love the opener so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's so great. And the voice in the whole letter is so good. I just love it so much. And so, I also love the idea of Hello World existing. It would be like birthday eve for me every day, and that would be awesome. So I'd be done with that. And I did have one. What was my other note here? Okay. Yeah, I did have just a couple like wordy notes too. Like as here, like outcast and branded as a weirdo. I think probably just put like an outcast in her town type of thing. You could probably condense that a bit. And then I loved that they included the inspiration is for more beloved classics around Halloween. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I almost wouldn't mind another note about the writer as well. Note about their education and they're in critique groups and why they're inspired to write this. But I always like, it's kind of a theme in my comments, I'd like one more sentence about the author, just a little bit more, so I get an idea about them as a person and everything like that. So
yeah, I want to say also, because I want to highlight one thing for other authors to like maybe think about in their own query. This sentence: now Morgan and Zane have 3 days to rescue Caleb, save Hollow World from grave danger, and still fulfill her dream. That is the perfect stake setup.
mm-hmm.
You understand what they're doing, why, what's at risk if they don't, from the information above, and it's just like a quick sentence that pulls everything together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Study that.
Yeah, I love that. The time frame in there is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very.
Like, ooh, that's really high stakes. That's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. I am thrilled to share Blood in the Water, a 105,000-word adult fantasy, combining the intricate and expansive world-building of the Daevabad trilogy and the Trader Beru Cormorant, and the compelling storytelling of the Unbroken. Influenced by West African Caribbean mythology and culture, this story explores generational trauma, the search for freedom, and the politics of colonialism in a Mad Max-style dystopian breakneck chase across the desert. 200 years ago, the gods were killed. The last god vanished in a war that cursed the bountiful Sargasso Ocean, turning it into a bleak desert. Muo spirits and humans alike are trying to survive in this desolate land of sun, sand, and monsters, none more so than Lady Ebieri, the naive puppet monarch of her Muo nation. Upon discovering that she is to be married to Oku, the prince of a rival Muo nation, so she can help break the curse over the Sargasso, plots her escape to freedom. But slipping away is not easy, especially when everyone she encounters has their own plans for her. Like the cocky scavenger captain Ebieri charms into kidnapping her, who just so happens to hunt down Muo spirits for their magic. Or the newest commodore of the West Ridge fleet, anxious to prove himself by capturing and killing any magic user in his path. Or her stubborn new husband, who will go as far as making deals with long-dead gods to get Ebieri back. Ultimately, she must choose between what she wants and doing what is best for her nation, or risk losing everything, including the freedom she so dearly craves. I am part of the Caribbean British diaspora. I started drafting this novel to explore my heritage through the mythology of the Caribbean and West Africa. I have the pleasure of telling you that Blood in the Water is a novel with serious potential. Written with multiple third-person limited POVs, it includes LGBTQ+, POC, and mental health representation. I have attached the requested submission package. Your time and consideration are highly valued and appreciated. I will be delighted to provide you with the manuscript upon request. Trigger warning: cannibalism, torture, murder, racism, and sexism. Thank you for reading.
This one was 375 words, so again, that's like pretty much a sweet spot. I would say anywhere from like 320 to 300 and, I don't know, 80 is like normal, quote unquote normal. This one, the first thing I want to say right off the bat is this just needs a really good proofread for grammar. There was quite a few like really small little grammar things that I pointed out that I'm not going to say because they're just like nitpicky little things. But the author should probably just give it a good proofread. The opening to this, again, we have metadata at the beginning, which I personally love. The ending sentence in which it says the Mad Max style dystopian breakneck chase across the desert. I literally, on my notes here, I just wrote the word fun in big letters.
Yes.
It's so fun. The other notes, so there's a couple things I do want to point out that are sort of grammar-ish things. One is in the beginning of this second paragraph, between the first and the second sentences, we just need some sort of a transition between those two sentences because it just felt like they were, the first one was kind of an unfinished thought and the second one was just kind of like a jarring jump to the next sentence. So like maybe just consider rewording the beginning of that paragraph. That said, I really, really like this way of introducing the main character. I think that really gives us a good like image of who she is. And I will just continue a little bit into the second paragraph. The one thing that confused me the most about this was that she charms the captain into kidnapping her. That gave me a really big question mark because I was like, did she want him to kidnap her? Like, it's not written as a good thing here. It's written as one of the things that is working against her. Yeah. But she charmed him into it. So now I'm like, is that like a weird plot point where she's like doing it on purpose? In which case, like, I think this needs to be revised for us to understand that more clearly. My other note on this one is much of this sort of second body paragraph is sort of just a list. And I would really love to see this described not in a list, but in a way where we're really putting the main character more in like the driver's seat. When you present a story as like, here's all the things that are happening to our main character, that is something sometimes that happens in a story. There are stories where that happens and it's valid and it's a good story, but sometimes that makes your main character feel has no agency and is just kind of like a puppet. And if you can reframe that so it's not all these things are happening to her, but like these are the things she's dealing with and this is why it's important to her. That sometimes just makes us care a lot more.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add on that note. Like, similar to you, the premise worked really well and the Mad Max line, like, I love that so much. Yeah. I was just like, okay, I'll read it. Yep. So fun. Sold me. I'm not an agent, so don't just stop there. I will say that much. And I didn't have a whole lot of notes when I was reviewing this on my own. I had some copy edits, phrasing, suggestions, that kind of thing, because I found myself stumbling over the cadence quite a bit. That was the main focus as I was reading. The premise is just honestly exciting and fascinating and like a mashup of all sorts of cool things. But Carleen's thoughts on this, the main body paragraph, talking about the captain, the Commodore, and then the new husband. I think that would be the main piece where some revisions would be most helpful. Because we're like it's a good introduction to the characters and each of the people are interesting, but it doesn't help us with that thing we were talking about in the last couple queries about the main concept of the story. Where is this headed? What's the main point?
Yeah, one of the things I bumped on actually more when we were talking about it and I was scrolling through it. I kind of read it as like at the beginning of this one paragraph, she is to be married and then later referred to as stubborn new husband. And that kind of bumped on that too. So I was like, is she married yet? Is she not married yet? And if it's an arranged marriage, like, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be important because he wants to get her back. But like, if it's like an arranged marriage, she's supposed to be married to this guy to help break her curse. And like, why does he want to go get her back so badly? So these are kind of things I didn't bump on as much till I read it through a second time. So the first time I was like, comps to David bad. Like, I loved the opener. I was really intrigued about the mythology. I love mythology. And so I sort of skimmed over that part. But
Yeah.
it is a bit confusing. And I don't think we need to meet that many characters in the book section.
Probably not.
Like, it's the main character's story. I think we can stick to her as much as possible, and not necessarily introducing all of these other characters. But the rest of it I like really loved. The Mad Max like breakneck chase thing, I was like, okay, well that's badass. I need to read this now.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like what I want out of adult fantasy. It sounds like there's lots of stakes, and it does sound like when the main characters they describe her as a naive puppet monarch, which I think is just like great word choices. And it tells us a lot about her. Sounds like she doesn't have a ton of agency. So I think, yeah, the reworking of the body, like the part about the book, is probably where it needs the most work, because the rest of it's really good. And I agree with the edit for grammar and stuff like that, because it was a little stumbly to read through. And I wasn't reading it out loud. That was just reading.
Yeah.
But it sounds extremely fun, and also I think the title is very cool. So that's what it for my thoughts.
This was one where I put like a big huge star about seeing the connection of the author to the story.
Yes.
This author did a great job explaining that.
Yeah, I loved that. I thought that was really, really well done. And then I want to talk a little about the trigger warnings. So I liked where the trigger warnings were positioned in this letter, but I want to hear Carleen's thoughts on the trigger warnings in them.
My thoughts are, I mean, I always appreciate a trigger warning. I'm not somebody who personally is like super triggered by a lot. But I always appreciate when I do see them. For this specific one, I think this is a good example where they put them at the bottom, which in some cases would not work, but in this case it works.
Yeah.
Because none of the things that they're warning us about were like shown in excessive detail in the query letter. So seeing it at the bottom, this is more telling us these are the trigger warnings in the book.
Yeah.
Which is great. I will also say, as like a baseline, if you're unsure if something in the query will trigger somebody, you can just put them at the top. It doesn't really matter. If you're certain that they're not in the query and you're just warning for the book, then put them at the bottom.
Perfect. I love it. Very helpful.
The Renaissance of Dark Magicians is an 80,000-word YA dark fantasy novel. A standalone with series potential, The Renaissance of Dark Magicians will appeal to fans of the villainous characters and murderous competition in Amanda Foody and C.L. Herman's All of Us Villains series, the contemporary dark academia of Olivia Blake's Atlas 6 and Naomi Novik's Scholomance series, and a slow burn friends-to-enemies dynamic akin to V.E. Schwab's Vicious. 18-year-old Benji and Ludwig are willing to do anything to join an elusive secret society of magicians, even going so far as to attempt a dark resurrection spell that has never been managed before. Their sacrifice is rewarded with invitations to the Hyde Society, but being invited does not guarantee they will become members. They must first survive a set of trials that involve deadly puzzles, murder games, and deceitful dark magic. Every step toward admission takes them further from their own humanity. Little do they realize the real cost of their curse. They have made themselves the bounty of a deadlier game. A great and terrifying creature begins to stalk them, killing all that get in its path. The only way they can escape the hunt is to choose a willing sacrifice out of the two. But who will be chosen as the sacrificial lamb? I am an LGBTQIA+ writer and a member of SCBWI Chattanooga and the Authors Guild. I am a University of Anonymous graduate with a BA in English and Literature and am currently working on a master's in education.
Okay, this one was super short. It's only 259 words, which if you can do a query this short and actually get the point across, excellent job, gold star, perfect. And I do think this one actually did a very good job. So
nice.
Clap, snaps to the author. I liked the setup for this. Again, we have metadata at the beginning. The one thing it was missing is this dual POV. It does mention two main characters, but does not mention whether or not it's a dual POV. So please tell us if it is or if it isn't. Either way. I think you two have some comments on the comps. I will say that my comment on the comps is when that I first read it, I wrote, I love comps that are explained why they are comps, and the author did a really good job here. However, what I will say is I actually didn't even realize that there was 4 comps. I totally skipped over one when I was reading. So take from that what you will.
Yeah, Maria and I were just chatting before we started recording this that we both stumbled over the comp section quite a bit, and I stumbled over it both when I was reading it like to do my notes, and then when I was reading it out loud for that portion. I just had a really hard time following the sentence. So I don't think, like, Carleen saying that she liked having that many comps, I would take that over my advice. Like, don't take this as there's too many, oh no. I would just say it's a question of sentence structure and grammar at this point, that the sentence is really hard to follow. So if it could be split up or just simplified in some way, I think that would fix the issue that I took from it personally.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, because it sounds like 2 of the comps are sort of for the same reason, that they're both contemporary dark academia, I think you could probably just pull one out.
Yeah.
Whichever one's stronger, leave it in. And it would flow really well still, and you still get your reasons for why each comp is a comp. So
solid.
Yeah, definitely. Moving into the body paragraphs, I really have very few notes. One of them is in the opening sentence, it says, they'll do anything to join an elusive secret society of magicians. Is that any society, or is that a specific one? Because when I first read this, I thought it meant like they're just looking for any society. And I was a little bit like, that seems odd. And then when we kept reading, later on it mentions the society. I would say mention the society up front so we understand it is like a specific thing, unless it is that they are just looking to join any elusive society, in which case maybe just restructure that sentence a little bit so that we understand they're just like desperate to find a network. I also want to say in this first paragraph, I absolutely love a story that is set up by adventure rather than destruction. It is so fresh to see a book that is just like, we're doing a thing because we want to do a thing. And it's not like, I'm doing a thing because my husband cheated on me and I'm upset, which we see a lot and can work and can be great. But it's just, it seems like every book, and maybe it's just me, every book I get in my inbox starts with destruction. And it's the books that start with adventure like this that I find so much more fun and fresh. I also think that this one set up really good stakes in that second body paragraph. And this author did a really good job of having like a quick, simple bio that was easy to read. And I was like, cool, sounds good.
Nice. Yeah. I liked your note about adventure, starting on a note of adventure rather than destruction. And I'm curious what you think about this, but when I was reading that initial body paragraph, the first question for me, like, I automatically assumed that it was a specific society, but like it could be, I could be wrong on that. It's not clear.
Either.
I made an assumption there. But the first question I had on that first sentence was like, okay, but why? Like, what does this get them? I think your point still stands, that if it's like, we want this because of this fun element or this fun, we're best friends and we've always wanted to do this and this is our dream together. Like, I don't know if you want to do a Rhett and Link kind of thing like that, but like something just fun and quirky could work, but just some explanation, like, why is this so important to them? Because that didn't come through for me. It was just like, okay, they want to be a part of this society because it's got a reputation. I was really stuck on that. That could just be me.
I think I made an assumption so that because they're like 18-year-olds, I kind of assumed that this is just like a coming of age, like teenagers being dumb teenagers kind of thing. And I could be 1000% wrong on that, but that's just kind of like the vibe I took from it.
Oh, okay.
But so your point stands. It would be good to know why.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was I think that was the main thing that I felt like I was missing, was just that motivation piece.
Yeah.
And then I did have a note. I don't know if this is actually true or just I read it too fast, but I felt a bit of a disconnect between that first body paragraph and the second one when it talks about the beast or the creature. I just was not really I was kind of unclear on how their mission up there for the society connected to suddenly there's this creature. It felt a little bit random to me, but it does say like the real cost of their curse is they've made themselves the bounty of a deadlier game. So there's something going on behind the shadows that we don't really know about. And that can work. It was a little kind of a gap in my brain for whatever reason.
Yeah. For me, and that's the kind of question where like I see it in a query and I have the same question, but I assume I'm gonna like it kind of makes me excited to read the book because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna find this out.
Okay, nice.
I don't think I need to know it at this stage,
Nice.
but it's good to have those questions.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I find that when I'm reading an actual book, I am a little bit more flexible and like I'm gonna learn this later. It's fine. But I also had a similar disconnect. I think maybe because it says it's dark fantasy, but I get real like dark academia, like discovery of witches kind of vibes from the first paragraph. And then we get like a great and terrifying creature that's stalking them and it kills everything it gets in its path. So it felt like an abrupt change from like a school setting with some magic to like what I am picturing. When someone says great and terrifying creature, I picture something like really large and
like Godzilla.
Yeah, like maybe not quite Godzilla size, but like, you know, it's gonna create some destruction.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess again, yeah, you would find it out when you read it, but I think maybe a little reworking on that section about the creature would be just to make it a little bit more specific, I guess. I don't even know. What was my other comment here? I don't think we have to know if someone has to be sacrificed, because that would be kind of fun to just find out as you're reading.
I don't know.
But,
I kind of like that. I was like, oh, they have to like pick. One of them has to die, and they have to pick. How are they going to force that decision? Like that came up with a bunch of questions that like motivated me to keep going. But
okay, see, I like it. I
don't
like
know.
that. Okay, yeah, I think it was just where the creatures introduced kind of just threw me off. I kind of was getting an idea of what we were getting into, and then I felt like a little bit thrown off.
I think that's helpful for like, I think that touches on what I was saying before. Like it defines what I was saying before a little bit better. That like that's the disconnect. I think you've pointed it out more accurately than I was able to. That like it was very dark academia in the first paragraph or the second paragraph of the query, and then when the creature is introduced, then it's like, oh, there's the like solid fantasy element. And I mean, both are fantasy, so it's a little bit of a blurry lines scenario. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Just like a little bit of smoothing out or using it, using the creature in the first paragraph and then diving into like how they're going to escape and like all the trials and stuff like that could be part of it. I mean, I don't know, but I thought this sounded really freaking cool.
Yeah.
That was the part I wanted to get to. I thought this was really, really cool.
Yeah.
So I would say I would read this definitely. Even though I don't read YA anymore, I would be fascinated if I pick this up. I know it.
Dear Agent, I am seeking representation for my debut novel, The Girl with Blood on Her Dress, a dual POV adult psychological thriller that is complete at 76,000 words and is comparable to The Lies I Told by Mary Burton, The Silent Bride by Shalini Boland, and the classic thriller Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. Eliza Graves' life is seemingly idyllic. She has a handsome husband, an oceanfront home, and a charming cafe that everyone loves. But when a hit-and-run driver strikes her and sends her into a coma, the cracks in her life immediately show when she wakes up 3 weeks later, unable to recognize herself, or others, or understand their language. The fact that she can only speak French comes as a complete shock to her husband, Eddie, who insists she has never spoken the language before. However, the police are not sure they believe him in light of his criminal past. But this means nothing to Eliza, who feels terrifyingly alone with all her memories erased. More disturbing still, when she looks in the mirror, she sees herself as a teenager, her dress covered in blood. She starts to suspect she may have committed a horrible crime when she was young. Her situation becomes even more frightening when the police inform her that whoever ran her over did so intentionally. Fearing for her life, Eliza knows that her past holds the key to uncovering why someone wants her dead, but if she hopes to recover her lost memories and survive the nightmare she finds herself in, she must put her trust in the one person the police believe tried to kill her, The complete stranger everyone says is her husband. Born and raised in Anonymous, I now live in Anonymous. I started writing novels late in life, and although The Girl with Blood on Her Dress is not the first novel I've written, it would be my debut. I'm hoping that it piques your interest. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, so this one again, most of these have all been like spot on for word count. This one was 355 words.
Nice.
I think the intro on this one was really good.
Yes.
We have comps, which is great. We don't have the explanation of why they are comps, but that's not 100% necessary. It's just nice to see. So something you could maybe consider adding, but you don't need to. I wrote a thank you note for telling us that this is a dual POV. I always appreciate that. I don't like to be surprised by that. Going into the body paragraph, I do think the body paragraph on this was a little bit long and it could probably be split up. And I think there's parts of it that could probably be taken out. The first thing that I said that I think can be taken out is the entire part about her current life, how it's idyllic and perfect, and we don't really need to know that. We'll see that on the pages. I think we should just start with, you know, the pivotal moment of like what starts this story, which is that when she gets hit by a driver and goes into a coma. And I think, there's a few things throughout here that I think you can just take out just for simplicity's sake. I will say the good thing about this query is that it brought up a lot of questions for me, but they weren't questions about the query. They were questions about like, oh, what am I going to see on the pages, which is kind of the point of a query. But they are things that I'm going to bring up because they might be things that you might want to think through if you want to add them into your query, or maybe it'll strike something for the author of like revising the pages. I don't know. So here's my questions. Who is the second POV? That's one of my first questions. Because we only really are introduced to Eliza, the main character. And then we're kind of introduced to two other people, the police and her husband, who she does not trust, or she doesn't know who he is, or however that turns out. We're not really sure. I'm wondering if it is the police that is the other POV, like a detective or something. I think that's really important to tell people, because that almost turns this into a little bit of a police procedural, which a lot of agents don't want, unfortunately. I will say that. It's not a rule, but it is something that people don't want to be like tricked into reading. So if it does have sort of police procedural vibes, I would just make sure that's clear. The whole plot point of her only being able to speak French, I'm very curious how this is going to work on the pages. Is there going to be some sort of translation? Is the audience going to be reading French and potentially not knowing what's going on? That's kind of a big question mark for me. That is something that like I would scroll down and see if the sample shows that, or, you know, potentially just wait to see the pages. Like, I don't need to necessarily know that here, but it is a big question mark. The other point, which is kind of a similar point, is fearing for her life, Eliza knows that her past holds the key. I'm always curious in books that rely on uncovering something from the past. How do we find out that information? Is it through epistolary content, like she finds old diaries? Is it somebody tells her that information? Is it through dreams or nightmares? Because some of those, depending on the book, some of those ways work really well and some of them don't work really well. And it would be good to know that before we go in. And again, that's something that we might see in the sample pages and we might not, depending on how soon it happens. But that is another one where I'm like, that could make or break it for an agent. Like, there are agents out there, not me, but there are some who hate epistolary content. They will not look at a book that has letters in it. And so that's something that I think is important to clarify if it is in there. Aside from those things, I think that this author did a pretty good job of setting up like a little bit of like a cliffhanger-y sort of question mark at the end with like the complete stranger everyone says is her husband. Like, that made me go like, okay, I want to know what's happening here. And I am curious and I would want to know what's happening. I'm just concerned about a couple of those pieces of like the French and the past and the second POV.
Yeah. Wow. This is the benefit of having an agent guest on the show. My goodness.
I have lots of things to think about in my head all the time.
I feel like I'm learning by osmosis, and it's wonderful because, like, I have a very brief bit of notes on this one. I thought it was a solid draft. Okay, I should start with, I am a big sucker for a good coma amnesia plot. Other people are not. Some people will say, like, it's overdone or whatever. I've heard that argument. I love the coma amnesia plot. I love that a lot. So that was right up my alley. And then, like, yeah, the hook portion of this query was really solid for me. I don't know any of the comps because I'm not, like, thriller isn't something I read a whole lot of, but that's just, you're not going to have that problem with a thriller agent. And then what else do I have here? I think Carleen already kind of summarized what I would have said, which is just tightening up those 2 body paragraphs. There's some details that could be removed. There's some phrasing and stuff that I think would be really helpful to tighten up. And then maybe it might be important, and Carleen, you can comment on this, it might be important to identify, like, how is this different from every other amnesia story? What makes it interesting? Is it that French piece? Because I was really intrigued by that as well. I speak French, so I'm like, okay, I'll have no problem. But the other readers, how are they going to work with that? And I don't think I've seen that done before. So, yeah, this was really intriguing to me, and I would love to read it. It sounds really fun.
Yeah, and like all the questions I brought up are not questions that would stop me from, like, I wouldn't query and pass on it. I would read the query and hope that my questions are answered either in the synopsis or in the first pages.
Yeah.
And then it would be kind of the thing where, like, if they're not answered and I still have those questions, then it would be like, it would probably sit in the maybe pile for a while I thought about it.
Yeah, and
whether... It wouldn't be a request, but it wouldn't be a pass, if that makes sense.
And you'd be, like, trying to decide whether you'd request more pages? Is that kind of
because sometimes the worry is, like, if this comes in and one of the options, you know, goes the way I really don't want it to, now I'm going to want to automatically pass on a full, and then I feel like a jerk because, right? Like, because, like, I'm still going to read it, but I probably know pretty soon into it that it's not for me.
Okay.
Whereas sometimes if those questions are answered early, it just makes that decision so much faster.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That is a delightful insight into the ancient world. Like, holy crap, that's, yeah. I think that really
we are learning by osmosis.
Yeah, it really helps highlight that, like, even when you're dealing with an agent and rejections from agents, it can be for something like that, where it's just like, you just happen to, and this is not you in particular, but just in general, an agent just happens not to like epistolary content, like you said, like letters. Yeah. And I resonate with that a little bit. I'm not really drawn in by a book that says so-and-so discovers the past through these letters that their mother left. Yeah. Like, I'm just like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to read that. I'm fine. I'm sure it's a great story, but not for me. And that's so subjective and so not like a commentary on whether your book is good or not. All that to say, really roundabout way of getting to, don't take agent rejections personally.
Yeah, please.
Just don't.
That's fair. Yeah, I had some thoughts as well about the flow of the body paragraphs about the book. It seems like a bit of, it feels like too much information and yet not enough for me. And the one thing that I found interesting, that this could just be a hint or it could be just the wording, but she must put her trust in the one person the police believe tried to kill her, the complete stranger everyone says is her husband.
Yep.
So,
I know where you're going.
I was like, is
he actually her husband? Or
it's
well, yeah, you gotta read it to find out.
I want it. I want to know.
And I had a note too about police aren't sure they believe him in light of his criminal past. Well, I'd like a little more specifics, like criminal past, like he had a joint on him one time.
Yeah.
Or like criminal past, like ran an underage sex trafficking ring. Like I would like to know,
or like was involved in a hit and run, because
or like gang or something, like it's something that gives a hint to like his trustworthiness, because no matter what it is, the criminal past is kind of a thing. But if the police aren't sure they believe him, then it has to be something worse than like, you know, some weed or whatever. And I would like to see that a bit in the query, at least a hint to it.
Yeah. Carleen, you had something to say earlier.
I was going to say, actually, Maria just pointed something out that I missed before, which was where it says the one person the police believe tried to kill her. If the police think he killed her, why is he not in custody?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And now I'm like, wait a second. There's like, is it a plot hole or is it just a hole in the query? And it's, I'm going to guess it's, I mean, I usually give writers the benefit of the doubt and assume it's not a plot hole and that it's just something that maybe needs to be worded better in the query.
Yeah.
But that is a sentence that maybe needs reworked.
I'm guessing that it's like they think he's involved somehow and that he was maybe the one who did, but they have no evidence, so they can't bring him in, right? Like that could be possible. That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
And then because I'm on the author bio ranting, I guess I didn't love this author bio, so I don't think that you want to, in a business letter, undercut yourself. So in this one, I started writing novels late in life. First novel I've written, it would be my debut, hoping that it pikes your interest. I think all of that out. You don't need that. You don't need to just shoot yourself in the foot before you even get in the door. And the first sentence of this query also states it's a debut, so it's also repetitive, so you'll want to pull that out.
Yeah.
And for the people who aren't sure what to put in their bio, this is like a big thing. So you can think about anything that you do that applies to your writings. Like we've seen some bios so far, they're part of the Writers Guild, they're this or whatever. And like, you know, in mine, it's like, oh, I have a podcast and then I have, like a writing group and stuff like that. So like, are you in a writing group? Did you take writing courses? Do you like live in the middle of nowhere with like a bunch of farm animals? Like I kind of want to know something about the author. And even if it should be in a way showing like your resume in a way, but it doesn't have to all be your schooling and things like that. Like it just has to be something. And I think it's best not to be too self-deprecating in letters like these, because you are trying to get them to represent you. You don't want to give them a reason to be like, well, they kind of sound like they're not sure if it's good, so now I'm really not sure if it's good.
Yeah. If you don't truly feel like you don't have anything else to say here, this is an interesting spot to put in some sort of a connection to the specific agent. And I'm not saying that you don't have to do in-depth research and like put a personalized thing for every agent. It is not necessary. But if you are struggling to put something in your bio, you could always use this moment to be like, I read on Twitter that you, like, I get it a lot where people are like, I read on your profile that you live on a produce farm. Like, that's really cool. And like, I always appreciate that because I'm like, I know you've done a little bit of research. And again, not necessary. If you don't have the time, it's fine. But if you are struggling to find something to put there, make a connection to the agent that is personal.
Yes, that's a good one too. I like that.
Really nice.
Yeah.
So we have reached the end of part 1. Query letter critiques. We will be back for a part 2, so stay tuned for that. But we wanted to take this opportunity to thank our lovely authors who are so vulnerable and courageous and brave. And you might hear that as sarcastic, but it's not. Like, we really value your contributions and are grateful that you are willing to, stick your neck out, send us your pages, that kind of thing. It's a very cool thing, and it does take some courage, so we appreciate that a lot, and it was really fun to see the kinds of stories people are cooking up. I just really enjoyed reading those and seeing how other people spend their brain time, because I'm so steeped in fantasy land. It's nice to be reminded that there's other books out there every once in a while. And then another big thank you to Carleen for coming on the show yet again. We're taking up a lot of your time today, so we really appreciate that. Thank you for sitting with us and providing your insight. I've already found it really valuable. So let us know a bit more about where can we find you, where can people submit to you if they happen to be writing in the genres that you represent, and anything else you'd like to add.
Thank you guys. Honestly, it's been fun. I think this one took less time to record than last time, to be honest.
Technical difficulties aside.
Well, that, and we kept going on a lot of sidebars last time. But yeah, people can find me. I'm on all of the socials at CLGSLR. My manuscriptwishlist.com profile is probably the best place to find information about me. I have all my links to everything there. And I actually am in the middle of updating my MSWL, so that should be updated soon. Nice. The only other thing I will tease is that I'm working on a top secret project with Agent Andy Smith. She's at the Booker Albert Literary Agency, and we are working on a project together that's going to launch in the new year. But I'm not telling you any details yet.
love the vague publishing updates. Love those so much.
Hey, we live for those.
Yeah.
You know. All right, well, that's the tea on query letters. So please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. If you want more of the Tea Grannies, you can join our Patreon. All links will be in the show notes. Thank you to our brave writers for submitting their queries, and we'll see you next month. Happy writing.